While kids his age were still lost in dreams, Rafi was already up before dawn, not for school, not to play, but to collect plastic bottles and scraps. Rafi, a 14-year-old boy, pushed a small wooden cart his late father once built. He walked through narrow alleys, eyes scanning the ground, searching for something of value in yesterday's trash. His hands were dirty, his clothes worn, but his eyes never lost their spark. He knew this wasn't the life he wanted, but it was the life he had to live. And that day, without knowing, he was about to begin a story that would change everything. That day, the sky was overcast. The air was damp, and the stench of garbage hung heavier than usual. But Rafi kept walking briskly through narrow alleys. His cart was nearly full, yet his eyes kept scanning. Behind a large sack of plastic, something caught his eye. He stepped closer. 2 objects he recognized instantly, though he had never owned them. A pair of running shoes. Their colors had faded, the soles were nearly torn off, and the smell was awful. But Rafi smiled wide. Those shoes were worth more than all the money he could earn that day. He held them like treasure, not because he wanted to sell them, but because, to him, those shoes meant one thing. A dream was starting to take shape. That night, Rafi didn't go to sleep right away. Inside the small plywood-walled room, he cleaned the worn-out shoes with soapy water and his mother's old toothbrush. He brushed gently, as if caring for something alive. Every speck of dirt he scrubbed off felt like a tiny wound in his life being healed. The shoes weren't just footwear, they were a symbol of hope. And for the first time, Rafi didn't feel like just a garbage collector's son. He felt like, maybe someday, a runner. The next morning, before the sun rose, he stepped outside. He looked at the shoes, now dry, sitting in the corner of the room. Without hesitation, he put them on. They were a bit too big, the soles still loose, but that didn't matter. He walked out, left the cart behind, and began to run. On the empty village road, without a coach, without a crowd, without applause, he took his first steps. His breathing was heavy, his strides uneven, but his smile never faded. He wasn't running away from life, he was running toward his dream. And in each small step that morning, the world began to feel bigger than trash piles and alleyways, as if the universe was silently watching and silently cheering. After a quiet morning run, Rafi returned home with heavy breaths and sweat-drenched clothes. He opened the thin plywood door quietly, afraid to wake his mother, who usually wasn't up this early. But that morning was different. His mother was already sitting on the floor, mending old clothes with trembling hands. Her face looked tired, yet her smile remained warm as she saw her son return. "Where were you, dear?" she asked softly. "Running, Ma," Rafi replied, a bit shy. "Running?" she repeated, surprised. Then her eyes glanced at his shoes, worn out with broken laces, but she didn't see what was missing. She saw what was rising, light, a dream, a hope that had long stayed silent in the corners of her prayers. She said nothing more. She just nodded and gently held her son's hand. "If you run, run as far as you can, and don't ever stop." Rafi nodded slowly, and for the first time, he felt his prayer had not only been heard by God, but echoed through his mother's voice. That morning, it wasn't just Rafi's dream that began. His mother's did. A week passed since Rafi began running every morning. His legs still ached, his breath still stumbled, but his spirit grew stronger. He felt more alive each time his sweat dripped onto the village dirt road. One afternoon, while helping carry cardboard boxes to a shop, he saw a colorful poster stuck to a wall. District-level elementary school running competition. Rafi couldn't look away. He stepped closer, read the date, and memorized it like a child memorizing a birthday. He knew he hadn't gone to school since his father died. He knew the event was only for officially enrolled kids, but he couldn't stop the surge in his chest. That night, he asked his mother hesitantly, "Mom, if I run in that race, is it okay?" She looked at him for a moment, then smiled. "If you believe you can, then why not?" In the days that followed, Rafi trained harder. He practiced breathing, counted his steps, and mimicked runner movements from old videos quietly played at the shop nearby. He had no coach, no gear, but he had a reason. And sometimes, that's more than enough. The race day arrived. The district field was crowded with tense and neatly dressed children. They laughed, chatted, and showed off their expensive running shoes. Meanwhile, Rafi stood far from the crowd, wearing a plain white t-shirt, worn-out pants, and his old, torn shoes. He came alone. No teacher to guide him, no school to call his name, but he stood tall. When he tried to register, a man in a batik shirt looked him up and down. "Which school are you from?" the man asked, suspicious. Rafi looked down for a moment, then answered honestly, "I'm not in school, sir, but I want to run." The committee member chuckled. A few kids behind him sneered. "This isn't a playground, kid. This race is official, not for street performers or scavengers." Rafi held his breath. His eyes shimmered, but he didn't leave. He stayed. Maybe they saw him as an outsider, but Rafi knew this starting line belonged to him too. And from afar, his mother watched quietly. Her hands trembled with pain, but her face smiled, because she knew her son wasn't just running from failure. He was running through rejection. Rafi sat at the edge of the field, staring at the track with a storm in his chest. His heart ached, but his legs still longed to run. He wasn't on the official list. No race bib, no starting whistle for him. But he was still there. He looked down, tied the laces of his old shoes as tightly as he could. He knew there'd be no medal waiting. But this wasn't about victory. It was about proving to the world and to himself that he deserved to stand at the same line. When the official runners lined up, Rafi stood quietly far behind them. A committee member spotted him again, ready to send him off, but for some reason didn't. Maybe it was the fire in Rafi's eyes, not of defiance, but of belief. His mother, outside the fence, gripped the edge of her worn scarf, whispering silent prayers for her son to stay strong, no matter what happened. The race began. The whistle blew. Kids sprinted forward, and without any formal cue, Rafi ran too, uninvited, unrecognized, but fully committed. He wasn't a professional runner, but every heartbeat was a thunder of will, every step a rebellion against a world that laughed at him. That day, Rafi didn't just race against time. He raced against the limits others placed on him. Track rumbled under the feet of dozens of uniformed children. Dust rose into the air. In the middle of all the noise, there was one boy without a bib number. His white shirt soaked in sweat, his shoes nearly falling apart, but his pace was steady. Rafi started far behind, but his breathing was calm, his steps consistent. He wasn't trying to beat anyone, except himself. One by one, he began passing other runners. Some spectators began to notice the boy without a uniform. Whispers filled the crowd. "Who is that kid? Why isn't he wearing a number?" Rafi heard nothing. The world went silent. All he could feel was his heartbeat, his breath, and the rhythm of his feet hitting the ground. At the edge of the field, Rafi's mother began to cry, not out of sadness, but tears of joy. Tears of seeing a dream she once held in prayer, now running right in front of her. The race officials looked at each other. None of them knew Rafi's name, but now every eye was on him. The boy unseen during roll call was now the one everyone was watching. Rafi wasn't the fastest, but he was the most unforgettable, because there was something in the way he ran, something no school could teach, the courage to show up, even when the world never called your name. Rafi was just meters from the finish line. His breathing turned heavy, his legs burned, begging to stop, but he kept moving. He wasn't just running anymore. He was defying every wound, every insult, every doubt ever thrown at him. The crowd stood. Cheers began to grow. Voices that once encouraged the official runners now shifted their focus. "Who's that boy? He's amazing, even with broken shoes." Even the other runners who had finished turned back to look. Some smiled, some stared in disbelief, but all of them knew something remarkable was happening on that track. One committee member who earlier tried to send Rafi away now stood silent. He reached for the mic, paused, then said, "Let's give a round of applause for this incredible boy!" The field roared. Rafi fixed his eyes on the finish line, his fists clenched, his breaths deep. But his eyes glowed with certainty. He knew victory wasn't just about being the fastest. It was about never giving up, even when you are never counted to begin with. That day, Rafi didn't take home a medal, but he earned something far greater: recognition. Rafi crossed the finish line without an official cheer, without a committee member raising his hand. But he smiled, a tired smile filled with tears, but also with victory. He stopped, bowed down, and kissed the earth, a silent thank you to the ground that had embraced every step of his struggle. His mother ran to him and hugged him tightly. "You've already won, son," she whispered, even though no medal hung around his neck. People began to gather. A local journalist took a photo. Some of the official runners came up to Rafi, shook his hand, and patted his shoulder. One teacher from another school said, "We need to find out who he is." That day, everyone knew one name: Rafi. That night, Rafi and his mother sat on the porch of their fragile home. In his hands was only a glass of water and a piece of bread, but in his heart was a fire that no one could extinguish. He looked up at the sky and softly said, "I want to run again tomorrow, Ma." His mother smiled in the dark, holding his hand, because today's finish line was only the beginning of a hope that would never stop. Thank you for watching the inspirational story of the Barefoot Runner. Rafi may have never stood on a podium, but his steps have inspired more people than any medal ever could. We are all runners in this life, and sometimes what we need isn't the best gear, but the courage to keep going, even when no one is waiting at the finish line. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to click like, leave a comment sharing what inspired you most, and share this video with your friends. Support this channel by hitting subscribe so you won't miss more heartfelt stories like this one. See you in the next inspiring video. Keep running, even without shoes.